I also wrote another article talking about what I call the institutional force function. So this is another element that I think very soon will become critical. So you look at BlackRock, okay, and BlackRock recently, and it kind of made a little bit of news, updated their post-quantum or their quantum risk disclosures for their Bitcoin ETF products and Ethereum ETF products and so on. I tweeted at them in December and I sent them an email because I own some of their products. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. I like to think it did, but probably not. But their previous risk disclosure was like very small little blurb, you know, and you read the fine print on those big documents, right? Now it's much more substantial, okay? So you look at Saylor as an example, whom I have a tremendous amount of respect for, but I think he has basically not articulated the risk, okay? And so I believe very soon Strategy will also be forced to update its post-quantum risk disclosure or quantum risk disclosure in line with what BlackRock has done. And in fact, even BlackRock's risk disclosure, I think, will get much more in depth. So you look at Circle, and I was kind of talking about this with the Circle IPO, and Jeremy Allaire, another great guy. Circle doesn't have any risk disclosure around this stuff.
Really? Yeah, we had Jeremy on the show a few years ago, you know, and they just had a massive, you know, 6x, 10x oversubscribed IPO. Amazing, yeah. But there's nothing in there?
As far as I know, as of today, I mean, I didn't check today, but as of like, I don't know, I probably checked a week or two ago, there was nothing. And yeah, now there's a fiduciary responsibility because they're public. Yeah. That's also one of the changes, right? And so then you go down the line and you look at regulators. So I'm very fond of ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Markets. I think they're one of the smartest in the world. And Abu Dhabi is going in a direction where, I mean, it's the new global finance. It's like the new Switzerland, you know. And everyone goes there and gets along. The entire crypto ecosystem is basically in the UAE. A big part of that was a guy named Ali Al-Nuami, who's a brilliant guy. He's a nuclear engineer. You know, during COVID, for example, their borders shut as well, closed as well, and they've got nuclear power. And so they actually had too much power in the grid. So they needed off-takers of power. And he's one of the guys that architected bringing in all the mining to off-take power, which I think in the context of proof-of-work blockchains, ancillary services to the grid is the use case. It's tremendously important because if you have to shut down nuclear power plants, it's very expensive. Those turbines are designed to spin for 20 years. They shouldn't stop because you get micro abrasions. Suddenly that thing, you know, becomes very expensive to maintain and fix. And likewise, if you have too much power in the grid, substations start blowing up and so on, right? So you need off-takers. And that's when, you know, the Bitcoin mining infrastructure came in. And of course, the rest of the blockchain infrastructure. And so you look at a guy like Dr. Marwan, for example, who's a pioneer there. He's a guy I've known since 2016, brilliant guy as well. And he brought in, you know, the blockchain center and all the different companies and so on. The whole ecosystem's there. Okay, so then they innovate. Now the VARA license, you know, that full license is like the coveted license. I think the regulator in the UAE, whether it's ADGM or whoever, is going to start mandating soon, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but as this risk becomes clear, to the exchanges. If you want your license, then you have to make sure that the coins you list at least have, you know, some standard, right? Like a roadmap, they're beginning in this direction and so on. I think that's going to be another institutional force function. The exchanges, so the ETF and other institutional financial product, you know, issuers like BlackRock, Fidelity, and so on. The stablecoin issuers in particular, you know, and I admire Paulo very much. And by the way, I think he's right on the MiCA stuff. He hasn't been compliant with MiCA, and his argument is it introduces systemic risk, and I think he's absolutely right.
This is Tether.
Tether.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, and so he doesn't have the same fiduciary because he's not public, but and by the way, it wouldn't surprise me if he moves to America and IPOs on the NASDAQ. But in any case...
They are creating a new stablecoin that's Genius compliant, apparently Tether is.
Yeah. Well, and that's smart, by the way. I think the Genius Act is much better than the MiCA stuff. But in any case, he's a guy that also will have to start looking at this stuff, you know. And so you kind of start putting it all together, and this is the institutional force function. It's the ETFs, it's the public crypto companies, it's the regulators, and it's the stablecoin issuers. They will force function blockchains to move in this direction. Again, it goes back to my thesis that having a strategy around post-quantum is the most bullish thing you can do, frankly. Now, I get their skepticism, and I think, you look at a guy like Martin Shkreli, I think he's a smart guy. He says a lot of smart things. He's very skeptical, and fair enough. And a lot of the points he makes are valid points. First of all, quantum computers, they're very limited in terms of what they can actually do. And certainly for the foreseeable future, that's definitely true. However, even he admits that at some point, they're going to be able to, break public keys by virtue of having access to public keys. Break private keys. So it's a matter of time. Now, even if you're a skeptic, and that's totally fine, there's not really any good argument against blockchains taking this seriously now, because in case the roadmaps are actually accurate, and one of the arguments is, well, you see these startups, these quantum startups, and they have really good incentives to put out flashy headlines that are bullish and indicate that they're moving along quickly because they're raising money, right? And so, and I buy that. I think that's a valid argument. It's one, let's say, salient point where people should be skeptical of these startups for that reason. However, DARPA doesn't do that, right? DARPA is one source of information. NIST is another one, okay?
Investment Club. Today, I consider it the best investment that I've ever made. We get 4 projects presented a week by their associated CEOs. Personally, I'm completely blown away by the quality of these projects, and I know of nowhere else where I would be given this same opportunity. Each week that passes, I feel more appreciative of the fact that I'm a member of this group. The vibe was just tremendous. Everybody's on the same wavelength. We just clicked. Everybody listened to each other, enjoyed their company. It was just magical, magical. Take action. Don't take my word for it. Due diligence you need to do. And I really hope that someday down the road I see you in the club. It far exceeded expectations, without question.
NIST is the U.S. government standards body for, basically cryptography standards, okay? And they release post-quantum cryptography candidates, which then go into the market. And by the way, 2 post-quantum cryptography candidates have already been broken as well. Psych, one of the isogeny approaches. And so and I do think a lot of the candidates that we're looking at right now, Sphinx and other lattice-based, some of these post-cryptography standards that will become more common name in the future, but they're pretty solid, although you need time to test these things in the real world. And so, even if you're a skeptic around all this stuff, which I think is totally fine, again, if there's a 1% chance that these roadmaps are accurate, and we're looking at 100% total loss, that should tell us rationally what we should be spending now, given the size of this ecosystem. Let alone, and I think we're going to see like a major pump in this ecosystem over the next couple of years. I mean, it's just my opinion. It's not financial advice. But what if we become a $30 trillion ecosystem in the next few years? Okay. All the incentives I laid out earlier, including, folks going to these post-quantum companies or these quantum advanced research labs with claims of lost private keys. I know people who lost their private keys to Ethereum ICO. Okay. I don't know. I guess there's different claims out there, but maybe 10% of all crypto is lost, right? People accidentally sending to burn addresses, people doing this, that, the next thing. I mean, you won't be able to recover a zero address, but there's lots of claims that people have. So even that segment of the market can go and engage in private commerce with these companies. And imagine if that starts. So here's another scenario, and this is kind of like an edge case, which might not be an edge case, but you hear these stories of these guys in Miami, and they're at a party, and they have some crypto, and they're showing girls on their phone, and oh, look at my wallet, and blah blah blah, and just okay, loose lips, talking about things they probably shouldn't be talking about. Okay, so let's say you're one of these guys one of these folks who lost their crypto, and you managed to recover it. In this fashion that I'm describing by signing a contract with one of these companies, and somehow it works out. And you have a super NDA and you've all agreed not to talk about it. And nobody knows. And again, there's no bat signal. There's no way to know a quantum attack has happened or a quantum enabled recovery has happened, a legal one. So now this guy's super happy. He's got his, 10 million bucks. He's on a yacht somewhere, he's having drinks, and he starts telling the story to another group of girls that he's hanging out with. This is what, and suddenly these rumors start flying around on the internet. Okay, that will start to cause panic, right? There's a lot of different scenarios where chaos can ensue if trust or the perception of trust has been broken as a result of this. And that's the point that I think a lot of people miss. Even if you're a skeptic, and even if you think this stuff is very, very far away, the perception is also a threat. Right. And the only way to mitigate that is to take this stuff seriously now. And so even if that perception, starts to permeate, it doesn't matter, because Bitcoin has taken steps to be quantum secure. Right. Ethereum has taken steps, and so on. So that's kind of my take on it. We'll see what happens. Personally, I can tell you, I've been running my own fund for about 5 years, just me. I don't have any LPs. I only use my money. The reason for that is because if I fuck it up, I don't have to answer to anyone. I just lose my own money, so that's fine. But I've stopped doing crypto deals. I stopped that late last year because most of the time as a VC, you invest in these projects and you get your tokens over a long period of time, right? It's easy to, criticize VCs, but we have to wait, right? And very often, and most of the time, these things fail, right? Vast majority of the time you lose money. It's just that the 1 or 2 times that you do hit, you want to hit big, right? That's how the game works. Okay, so if I start doing venture deals now, it could be 4 or 5 years before I get all my tokens between the vesting and so on. I can't. I'm just not going to take that risk anymore. So I pivoted. Now I do post quantum investment only, more or less. I mean, I do other industries too, but as it relates to crypto. So Never Local was my first deal. That's these 2 guys from Oxford, Stefano and Fabrizio. Now it's a team of I think there's 7, and they all have the same pedigree or background. It's that Venn diagram: physicist, engineer, and crypto native. And I think, and this is one of the things you and I have talked about, and maybe this initial part of the conversation was a bit of doomerism, but it's not to be a doomer, it's to just articulate the risk and think about it. But then the other side of it is what I like to call, again, quantum hopefulness, which is the opportunity. And just like when Bitcoin came, and then later others, Ethereum and so on, so much opportunity and wealth has been generated. And I think we're on the verge of quantum money, and we're on the verge of entirely new systems that don't require this trust infrastructure, i.e. consensus. I'd like to say consensus is the last middleman remaining, whether it's miners or validators, whatever the consensus mechanism is, that's the last middleman remaining. And so thinking about entirely new systems and new paradigms without that is tremendously exciting. And I think it's going to be a massive wealth generation effect that many entrepreneurs, particularly ones who are early, will do very well. Just like how, we were talking about Max Kaiser earlier. He's a great guy, and obviously he was early to Bitcoin, and he's done tremendously well. I disagree with kind of, because again, it's all intertwined. The Bitcoin price is dependent on stablecoins, so you kind of need those other networks as well, right? But in any case, those people who do well early on, I think will find a wealth of opportunity as this technology, nears, right, and gets closer and closer.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.